嗯，好，那你怎么这么正襟危坐呀？
啊，那我要放松一点。那我是这哪个状态？我像啊，
开心就好，没事儿。所以现在放在你面前的呢是4个可能女生会经常用到的东西，然后希望你现在可以分别依次辨认一下它们，告诉我它们的用途。
我一个都不认识。
你可以试图猜一下。
Okay. Immediate relief. Proven to relieve dryness and irritant. 这个是不是就是就是爽是吧？润肤用的，就是
它都写的这么明显，它上面应该有写 lip 吧？
哦，是 lip， 但是这个 lips 的功效我其实也不知道是不是爽肤啊？
就是润唇，就是你嘴唇干的时候涂在嘴上，你可以试试，如果你想的话。
还是涂嘴唇的吗？说实话，我看到这种 lips， 我的第一反应是就是涂在脸颊上。哦，它是这个。
或者你可以试试这个蓝管的香味更浓一些。
就是这几个，他们都是涂嘴唇用的吗？
不是，只是这个，就是刚好。哎呀，我的手，这一个还有你手上那一个是涂嘴唇的。
天哪，你们好复杂。这个这个我认识，这个就是涂在手上，就是防干燥的，是不是？就是涂了之后就防寒啊，防开裂啊啥的。
那它的学名叫什么呢
？hand cream。
对，中文呢？
我替翻一下手膏。
护手霜。可见护手霜这个词都不在你的语汇里哦。
是这样。
神奇。好，那我们再来看最后一个，这个五彩缤纷的是什么？
它是五彩缤纷的吗？它现在就是
五颜六色。
就是那个敷在脸上的那个叫什么来着？makeup 是不是？它就是 makeup。
对，但是你说的是一个很 general 的类，它具体叫什么？
化妆品。
化妆品就是 makeup 呀。
我想一下，我妈好像跟我，就是她有一次带我逛街的时候，好像谈到过这个，是我就是有点忘了，就是那个叫什么爽粉吗？就是涂在脸上，涂那种，不是，
是腮红。
哦，对，腮红，是不是就是涂在？腮是哪一个？是不是也是涂在那个嘴上的？不是，那是口红吧？
你要试试吗？可以在手臂或者哪里你想试哪里都可以。
可以直接用手。
可以，而且你闻它会有一点香味儿，就不是所有腮红都会做出有香味儿的。我意思是你凑近了闻，凑近了这个盘子闻。
是。
所以就是女生的东西就是做得很精致。
是。
明明它只是一个颜色，在脸上让脸有颜色的东西，但是却把它做出了香味儿，就是使用感，提升使用感的幸福度吧。
是，一下子这个格局就打开了就一下就把我赶得更邋遢了。就怎么说呢？就对我这个直男就是降维打击。
所以在这4个里面，如果让你选一样，就是可能会以后会用到，就不管用几次吧，你会选哪一样？
护手霜吧，因为护手霜其实在这里还是怎么说挺实用的。毕竟你看就在外面就每天都冰天雪地的，天寒地冻的，就 肯定还是需要像这样的东西护护手上。
那嘴呢？嘴也很干啊。
啊，这是一个问题，问到我，这个确实。啊，我的答案是直接就喝牛奶，就是什么美国不是那种 so called 那种我也不知道，是流着牛奶与蜜的国度吧，就是上个世纪，但是我那些老一辈的那些广州移民都说啊，美国就是那种流着牛奶与蜜的国度啊，那我们就喝牛奶吧，就反正不是地上都有嘛，就我们就。
所以是真的是真的在试图搞笑，还是就是因为不想用唇膏说了一个比较冠冕堂皇的理由？
两者都是。
唇膏到底为什么不想用啊？
麻烦。
护手霜不麻烦啊？
护手霜当然不麻烦，就是护手霜的话，你就涂在手上啊，然后随便那样做几下就好了。你唇膏还要这样一下。我其实也是用过那种唇膏，但是怎么说不习惯用，就是不是很喜欢，就是这个东西吧，它就可能 not my favorite。搞定了。
藏区。
对，藏区。
I grew up far away in Shanghai. I've been thinking of coming here for over a decade. I want to see how much freedom of life a woman can possibly enjoy. After a plane flight and a 7-hour drive, I arrived at a Muslim village by the lake. People here are called Moso. The Moso are a small minority group that has an estimated population of 30 to 50,000. They believe in Tibetan Buddhism and have their own language. Chinese say the Moso society is the country's last matriarchy.
这里结婚，人家会觉得挺怪的。
查戳是谁？
我也会觉得很别扭的。这种
他名字啊？
没有，我是说他是啥角色
Moso women do not marry in the traditional
明显就是这个民族的女的呀。
Practice what they call working marriage, a tradition that has persisted for at least 1,000 years. A man walks into a woman's bedroom at night, and she decides if she wants him to stay.
What?
In the morning, he must leave.
所以男的自动上门让女的上。
因为他走婚海场什么的都不同意嘛，各干各的嘛。
Working marriage。
在一起谈情说爱嘛。我们的爱情应该是两个人合得来就在一起，合不来就各走各的，很和气的就散开了，何必要去结婚呢？何必要去什么法院啊搞个什么结婚证呢？说难听一点，就拿那一本红色的结婚证当自己的手铐干什么呢？对不对？
Moso children don't live with their fathers.
My good sides. I gotta make sure the lighting is right.
You look stunning. No worries.
Thank you.
So just like, do you think you're privileged, as a white American and also a guy?
Yes, certainly, in both ways, honestly. In terms of race, obviously, yes, white people, especially in America, are favored over any people of color, any immigrants, any refugees, etc. It's unfortunate to see, and a lot of white people don't tend to recognize that. I feel like the younger generation is starting to grow more understanding of that and more. They're able to recognize their privilege a little bit more because they see, especially with mass media nowadays, they see what's happening around the world to people of color and to immigrants and etc. and they're realizing, like, why have I never experienced this? Why, you know, I can walk out in public and never get insulted by anyone. As a man, I can also walk out in public and not get catcalled by anyone. So it's beginning, like, younger people in general are beginning to recognize their privilege a lot more, and I do recognize my privilege both as being white and as being a man. Especially living in, well, Appleton isn't the largest city, but Wisconsin is rather politically polarized, I'd say. So you see a lot more injustices in Wisconsin, a lot of bigotry and bias in Wisconsin. So coming to Lawrence, seeing all the stuff that's happening it's like, you can really see your privilege as in any aspect, being white, being a man, etc.
Do you feel happy about it because you're the one who get the benefits and privileges?
Happy, I don't think is the right word. Happy is not correct because it's not like I deserve this more than anyone else. I didn't do anything to deserve this. I was simply born. I did not ask to be white. I didn't ask to be a man. I didn't ask to be anything else either. I just came out as what I am. And being given that privilege that other people are not given, that doesn't feel right because they didn't ask for that either. They didn't, you know, they didn't live some past life that, you know, determined, oh, in your next life you're going to be underprivileged or anything. So I don't think happy is the right word to describe my privilege. I think it's more so I'm lucky, whereas a lot of people in this world are not lucky. And ideally, we take luck out of the equation and make sure everyone is treated fairly and equally.
I know many guys who just take their privileges as granted and never think of like trying to help people who is not as privileged as they are. What do you think of those guys?
I think you see that a lot in terms of, so there's definitely two kind of aspects here. I'd say in one way, there's hypermasculinity is making men unaware of their privilege because they like to think that, okay, so they could either be very politically biased and think that men are just greater than women in many ways. If they think that, then they're obviously not going to be like, oh, I'm privileged over other people. They're just going to think I am better than other people, which is not true. There's no inherent quality of a man that's better than a woman or than a non-binary person or etc. And then there's also some smaller group of people who think masculinity is actually being oppressed in society now. I also believe that's entirely wrong as well. But you will come across some people who are like, oh, you know, being a man is actually underprivileged because I don't even know how they formulate their arguments. It's just completely like a backwards way of thinking. Like, people generally like to think that they are the ones being targeted. People like to think that they're being hurt, they're being targeted by the rest of society, and that they deserve more than what they have. So any shortcomings in their life, they like to blame not on themselves, not on other circumstances. They like to blame it entirely on systemic problems that are targeting them. When it comes to a white man, you don't have any systemic problems targeting you for the most part. So there are definitely men out there who take their privilege for granted. They don't recognize it, or they think they're the ones being oppressed in society. It's the best way is to try and get them to understand and recognize that they do have privilege. It's a little hard to figure out how to do that because with modern day political thought, so many people are very closed off to any factual statements. So if they hear something that doesn't fit with their current worldview, they will just outright deny it. And it takes a lot of slow work and like counseling and just working through and really thinking about where your own thoughts and biases come from to work past political ideology and to start understanding, okay, like what is reality for especially other people who don't live the same life as me.
Do you think or believe that women are generally more oppressed than men?
Yes. You see it a lot. Definitely feminism has helped raise their social standing as well by a decent amount. It's helped raise their familial standing as well. But they're still rather oppressed in society. I mean, there's so many societal expectations placed upon women. It could be, what you have to wear and what you have to look like on a day. Women have to wear makeup and take care of themselves a lot more than, for a man, you just wake up in the morning, put on sweatpants, and then that's considered standard. There's definitely a gap of just societal expectations there. As a woman, you can walk around on the street and get catcalled. A man never has to experience that. A man doesn't experience people hitting on them. There's an extremely large worry of sexual assault for women. There's also sexual assault among women is vastly underreported due to a lot of times if you do report it, some people blame the woman and they say, oh, well, she was asking for it, and then nothing comes out of it other than more pain for the victim. And that's really terrifying. But men, there is sexual assault among men, and it is also underreported, but far less so in a different way than for women. It's less of a problem for men. They can walk around at night alone, not really have to worry about it. Whereas as a woman, I mean, even just as talking to my friends and whatnot, they've said yeah, if it's ever nighttime and I need to walk across campus, if I'm alone, I have to call one of my friends to come pick me up. They can't just freely walk back to their dorm. At least they're less comfortable doing so because there's still a lot to worry about, even on a campus like Lawrence, which is partially safe compared to maybe state schools or schools in not as great neighborhoods or etc. They still have to worry about it. I mean, it's just there are so many extra thoughts about safety and about existence that runs through a woman's mind during the day that men just have never considered in their entire life.
Oh. I don't know, I just want to say your English is really good. I already take you as half Chinese. I think, wow, you really speak good English.
I'm glad you think my English is good. It's kind of my first and only real language.
I don't know, you just get along well with so many Chinese students and you're so friendly to everyone. You speak so well Chinese without accent. I would just take you as Chinese sometimes. And then when you speak English, wow, is it him?
I was talking to, do you know Lulu?
Yes, Lulu.
Yeah, I was talking to Lulu. And she was saying she's gonna hit someone. It's oh, 你会吊打他. She's do you know 吊打? And then she started laughing. She's you're 95% Chinese right now.
Yeah, and then just I think you're really you have so many deep thinkings, and I think that's really good and really critical thinking. And
yeah, there's a lot to think about in the world right now. Every time you hear anything, you're just oh my.
And it's weird because I think it's almost like a talent for you. You can being so privileged but still recognize you are privileged and recognize women being not privileged and oppressed. How can you do that?
I will say it even took me a lot of time. I mean, I was raised not really thinking about this, as many men tend to be raised. They tend to not be told to think about their privilege, not be told to think about gender differences or etc. They're privileged, but that's just how they're born, so they think that's natural for them, so they don't ever think about it and actually consider it. So even for a while in my life, I never thought about these problems. If you asked me these questions, I'd be I honestly don't even know how to answer that. But as I said, with mass media, you start to hear a lot more stories, and if you're more open-minded and you talk to a lot of people and really listen to what they have to say, then I think you can start to develop the critical thinking skills necessary to not just think about other people's places in life, but to think about your own as well. How do you exist? Why you exist the way you do? And what kind of life you're living, how much of that is in your control, and how much of it is just based off of the way you were born.
Yeah. I talked to many people, men, women. Some of they think that men and women are equally oppressed in the society. because men, they're also like asked to not reserve their emotions and just do not show their emotions, and have to pretend they're really strong, and they never cry. Like even though they get hurt, they don't go to hospital, or that will impair their masculinity and stuff. So yeah, so men are also like not immune to those things. But why would you say that women are more oppressed by them?
So when it comes to being like men having to repress their emotions and everything, I would say the main difference is toxic masculinity is very much so an inner thing. There are some like fringe people who like, oh, if you're not masculine enough, then this guy's gonna make fun of you for it. But that's far less of a big deal, especially since a lot of men are realizing that masculine nature, toxic masculinity as it's often called, is actually self-damaging. It's a mindset that hurts you a lot, which is why suicide rates among men tend to be much higher. It's because if they're dealing with mental health problems and everything, they're not told it's okay to talk to people about it. They assume that they just have to keep it inside, and obviously that's not good, and that leads to a lot of problems. But I would say the main difference is it's not oppression from other people in a way. I'd say the damaging nature of toxic masculinity is mostly an internal thing. And it's a mindset that you don't have to live with. Whereas a woman worrying about how she's going to get back at home late at night is a mindset she has to live with, because otherwise the oppression that comes from being a woman comes from the outside targeting them. So it's other people doing that oppression and doing the targeting and whatnot, as opposed to the problems that arise from toxic masculinity is an internal thing that can be worked through, and you can learn that it is acceptable to display your emotions, and you don't have to be some super hyper masculine 250-pound massive buff dude to fit your gender role or whatever.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with you. I also think it's not fair to say that women and men are equally oppressed. But still, I think it's for men, it's not just internal thing, but also there's pressure from externally, like men and women. Other men and women will also like judge a man if he's like masculine enough, or yeah.
There is definitely a lot of that. Like I said, even as I was raised more masculine than I might be like now or whatever. I mean, who knows? Am I masculine? Am I a femboy? Who the fuck knows, right? But, Lauren, I see you laughing. But there are definitely people who will make fun of a man for being not masculine enough.
Sissy.
For being a sissy boy, being a soy boy, being a femboy, whatever you want to label it as. But that doesn't target their safety as much, and I think right now a lot of the oppression that women face targets their actual safety as a human being. Their safety, their bodily autonomy with issues like abortion and any legislation trying to prevent women from doing things just hurts their autonomy. Whereas being not hyper-masculine doesn't hurt my autonomy or my safety in any way. It's simply just like you get the few kind of comments from people making fun of you, which, if being a woman was just boiled down to, okay, like occasionally a dude would whistle at you, then you could argue that there's like something equal there. But women have a lot bigger problems and a lot more problems that they face that come from other people that I agree. I don't think it's fair to say that the oppression that men and women face are equal. There is some mild amount of oppression that less than masculine men tend to face, but a lot of that, for the most part, does not target their safety as a person.
Yeah. Oh, one of my there's a teacher in my class was origin from Russia. He told me like being gay in Russia would actually like get punched in the streets.
Yeah.
And that sounds scary.
every society is definitely trying to get through with that. I mean, even in America, being trans will get you punched in the streets, which is absolutely terrifying to think that there are people who, you know, hold that belief. There are people with that way of thinking around the world, and it's definitely very necessary to correct that because it's causing a lot of harm to so many people. And it's certainly a big question. Like, how do you get someone to accept that, okay, a trans woman is a woman and a trans man is a man? A non-binary person isn't a man or a woman simply because they don't fit with those gender roles. It takes a lot of talking and a lot of thinking about it, and so many people just aren't open to that kind of thought that I'm not sure, you know, how do we get to a point where all societies around the world can accept you, whether you're masculine, feminine, both, neither, gay, straight, asexual, pansexual, etc. Like, you name it. How can we build societies that accept everyone? It's very difficult to answer that question, and I don't think anyone's actually reached that yet, but we still have to try to do something, you know? And I think the first step is just recognizing privilege in the first place. What privilege do you have? Why do you have that privilege? And why is it not afforded to other people? In what ways can you end up making it afforded to those people as well?
What about for those men who think actually, like, they would say, well, women are also privileged because they think it's our responsibility to take care of them, and just when we are like being the breadwinner of the house, they can just stay at home and being in a more comfort environment, so we're protecting women. How would you like persuade those guys that like women is not as privileged as they think?
How do I put my thoughts into words on this one? I don't want to just repeat the same stuff that I've said before of like, oh, well, for a man, okay, like you just have to work, whereas a woman has to worry about her safety all day. I don't want to repeat exactly what I said because I feel like there's a deep
口罩很有意思啊，就是看上去很可爱，但是同时就是在刻板印象里，它和就是你一个肌肉猛男的那个形象好像有一些反差，就是会被觉得，哎，为什么一个这么男性化的人会戴一个这么可爱，有点像社会刻板印象下可爱的，就是像女性化的一个口罩？就有没有就是想过有这种担忧吗？被别人说？
我觉得没有。第一就是很简单，就是因为我觉得 Lawrence 他是一个比较，就是我觉得 Lawrence 这个 campus 都比较 safe open，就是我觉得而且大家都是成年人，所以说我觉得对这种东西是真的没有各种这个 judge 或者担忧什么的，因为这种东西我觉得青少年可能才会有，但是就怎么说呢？我觉得按社会角度来看的话。其实挺好玩的，因为以前心理角度来看的话，以前是男生穿粉色，女生穿蓝色，然后有个女权运动，然后这个颜色就换回来了。